You'll find it in books like mine, books like Marion Keyes, books like Kathy Kelly's. Books about women often contain sex scenes because our lives contain sex scenes if we're lucky.
Right, so apparently we're all reading filth now with dragons and shadow daddies, whatever they are, and spicy chili ratings to prove it. But is it actually helping women figure out what turns them on and say what they really, really want? Or is it making real life sex and real life men look a bit, well, shit? I'm Jennifer Zamparelli, and this is Just Between Us. And today, author and former sex columnist Vicki Notaro is here to give us all the deets. But first, Darren is here, just back from her alone holiday, and she read a little smut lit.
Yes.
Did you know? Did you seek it out? Did you know it was smut lit, or was it a bit of a surprise?
No, it was a pleasant surprise. Didn't have a clue. I went into the airport and I was like, that'll do the job. Ugly Love, it was called.
Ugly Love.
Maybe that's what attracted me. I can relate.
Okay, so give us the plot.
The way I see it was, it's a mixture between 50 Shades of Grey and The Notebook.
Okay.
Yeah, it had it all. It was emotional and then also had this kind of sexy element to it that I was sitting on the beach and I was like, oh my God, didn't expect that.
And did you get a little bit self-conscious when you were reading the smutty bits?
I got a bit of heart palpitations. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is something. Yeah, I did. Like, it was just unfortunate, I suppose, that I was on my own.
Or not. Whatever way it goes,
yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Did you read 50 Shades then?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your thoughts on that?
I would have thought that this book was more kind of mainstream sexiness. The whips and chains, I wasn't really.
Not for you.
No, it wasn't
Not
into
right
it
now.
that much.
Never say never.
Never say
never.
Jamie Dornan, if it was him.
Well cast, I would say. Yeah, it was complete fantasy, wasn't it? I think what I liked about it, okay, whatever your thoughts are on how it was written, it was complete fantasy and it was so far beyond the realm of reality with him being this billionaire, you know, whisking her. I just thought that for me didn't sit right. That's why I kind of enjoyed it because I could just let go and go, I don't like getting too close to real life.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can use your imagination then and it's something that isn't.
That's why I think I might be into that whole fantasy smut.
Yeah, you
because
can really
it's so far beyond.
Yeah,
you know, there isn't a unicorn near me. You know, apparently you can get like unicorn dildos are really popular now.
No way! Just like
people
the
are
head
into
of
it.
The unicorn.
No,
or
like the horn.
Yeah,
the horn. Yeah.
So it's just the horn on its own.
Just the horn.
That's all you need.
All different colours. All different shapes and sizes.
Beautiful rainbow.
Where do you find smut lit? Like it's not easily found, is it?
No.
It's kind of disguised in romance.
My first experience with smutlit, I'll never forget it, was in the hairdressers. And my mum was getting her hair done and it was like a Marie Claire. You remember the magazines would all be on the table and I was like, what is this? I never knew that something like sexy existed. And it wasn't a story. It was like people writing in with, this is what happened to me. And it blew my mind. I was like, this is cool. And then I never realised that there was novels until 50 Shades of Grey that people actually wrote about this. So like you said, it was kind of this opener into this whole new world that I feel like I need to get outside myself to actually get in the zone. So.
And that's one of the really positive things that 50 Shades has done. It made it kind of more mainstream. And now we're talking about it. Now we want to get our hands on smut lit and what are the good books, the good, the bad, the ugly, and something for everyone out there. Let's speak to Vicki and see what we should be reading and what it should be doing for us.
Oh, excited.
So before things heat up, a little love for our sponsor, Kildare Village. We're all for sparks flying when the curtains are closed. But sure, look, it's no harm to take yourself out for a bit of excitement too. With over 100 boutiques, including 60 you won't find anywhere else in Ireland, a visit to Kildare Village is shopping that's so Irish. Vicki, great to have you.
Delighted
Finally,
to be here.
you're here.
I'm thrilled. Thank you.
You're back.
I'm back in the building in which I met my husband, which is strange on many levels, and it looks very different now. But yes, it's the scene of the crime.
He was the IT guy.
He was the printer fixer. So I had lots of problems with my printer.
Does that feature in any of your books?
Not yet, but
Okay.
yeah, I must get him in there somewhere. A nice workplace romance. Yeah, it was fun. There was lots of emailing back and forth.
Oh,
yeah, it was good.
so cute.
Good times.
So nice memories.
Very nice memories of Talbot Towers, as we called it back in the day. Yeah.
I love
Independent house.
I love it. Okay. This is all quite new to me.
Okay.
So it's going to be like a little lesson.
Right.
I suppose.
I can educate you.
Yes, you're the woman for the job. But before we get into, dragons and shadow daddies and all that, what actually counts as smut?
Anything that's arousing, I think, in my opinion, anything that gets you going. And that can be quite tame, and it can be quite feral, and it can involve dragons, or it can just involve human male penises. You just
Okay.
It's a bit of anything that's designed to get you a bit hot under the collar.
Mostly written by women?
Yeah, I think so. Women, and there's a few gay men, smut writers, but mostly women, and a lot of women writing queer fiction as well.
Okay.
So like The Heated Rivalry Success is obviously written by a woman, which is amazing. And, that just keeps going. It's storming the book charts ever since and all over BookTok. So yeah, anything that's just designed to be a little bit spicy.
Okay. Good to know. So can you give us some words, or is there terminology that's in that world that we don't? Because I just, my producer had a T-shirt with the chili rating on it. Is that's a thing?
So on BookTok, you'll see a lot of chilies. So what's surprising to me is that some of it is aimed at like teenagers even, or like, adolescents at least, like not young teenagers. But yeah, I remember being on a plane recently and the girls behind me were talking about how spicy Or Not a Book was, and they were like 14 or 15, and I wanted to be like, girls, stay reading nice things for now,
Yeah.
But when you're that age, I guess it's attractive. There's lots of words. Shaft is always a good one. Thrusting, his huge member, etc., etc.
Love it. Speaking of teenagers reading stuff like that, the Judy Blume book got battered around
Forever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember Forever. I read that when I was way too young to be reading it.
Me too.
Because I think I'd read like Fudge, which was one of her like really cute young books for like 8 to 12 year olds. And my mum was like, oh, great author, we'll keep borrowing this from the library. And she actually bought me a copy of Forever. And I remember I had a shiny gold cover. Is that the one that you had?
Yeah.
And I'd written all over it, like written about my boyfriends, like VN loves, etc. And underlined passages. And that was, my taste for smut is quite old fashioned. I like all the ones from the 70s, 80s, Jilly Cooper, Jackie Collins, and of course, Queen Judy Blume. And yeah, in Forever, they named the penis Ralph.
That's right.
And I remember thinking then that all penises had names. For a good long time, until I think I saw one in real life. Is
that your Ralph?
Yeah. And like they refer to condoms as sheaths, which is very American, which is something that I'd never heard of. So I remember looking up sheath in the dictionary to see what it actually meant in an actual paper dictionary, because we didn't have the internet back then. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning of my love affair with smut. But again, it was quite old fashioned. It was quite respectful. There were no dragons, and there were no dragons. There was no romantasy back then. It was just straight up riding.
So why is Romantasy the perfect example of what women want from these books?
I think fantasy in general is very appealing to women as a genre because it's so escapist. It just allows you to not think about the real world at all. Yeah. You're in a world of witches and wizards and, space cowboys, because there's also sci-fi romantasy. And yeah, it kind of takes you out of the real world, which can be pretty crap at times. And it's so unusual. It's almost forbidden, kind of. And yeah, I don't know what it is about sexy dragons, but they do sell. And my husband would kind of exclusively read fantasy and sci-fi fantasy. He doesn't like books set in about real life. And he was like, yeah, I guess they are pretty smutty, but that's not why I'd read them. But that's why they're so popular at the moment, because they can be quite raunchy.
And I suppose it's just where your husband's reading fantasy. But just back to the smutlet, it just seems to be so popular with all my female friends now. I suppose, as we discussed, it has been around for such a long time.
Long.
Just women aren't ashamed to talk about it.
I think a big part of the resurgence at the moment is audio. So a lot of women like to listen to smut in bed at night. One of my characters in my new book is always flat out while her husband's asleep listening to raunchy books. And I think men are quite visual creatures. Women like to listen to things. and kind of take it in that way. And we can find that very erotic. So I think that is a big part of it. It's kind of, you don't have to have an actual physical book. It can be something that's kind of your little secret and you can just pop in while the kids are asleep and have a great time. But yeah, Smut's been around forever. Like I remember watching a documentary about Jackie Collins, and she'd be one of my own literary heroes. She was a real rule breaker and ball breaker back in the day. And she was kind of like, everyone was scandalized by her. She was on, I think it was Michael Parkinson's chat show, and people were like berating her. Barbara Cartland, the author, was berating her for being so disgusting. And she was just like...
Just because she was talking about
sex. And she was like, it happens. You do it. We all do it. Like, what's the problem? And people obviously loved it because her books were absolute blockbusters. So people were relating to it, even though the sex her characters were having was, like people were dying of heart attacks mid-ride, and, there was sex in nightclubs, sex on rafts, like just her books were quite wild for the time.
You said, I'm pretty sure you said this because it was in the brief, your editor has never edited a sex scene.
No, she hasn't. We don't even talk about them. They just...
like it.
Do you know what? I feel like that's a sign of a good sex scene. And I know that if it turns me on, that it's going to turn the reader on, right? Like you'd be sitting there going, oh, Jesus. But yeah, we've never talked about it. She said in the past that, choreographing a sex scene is similar to choreographing a murder almost, because she would edit books that are also, crime oriented as well as my kind of thing. So they have a lot in common, like, where does that hand go? What was the killer blow? But no, I've never had a note on a sex scene. So I take that as quite a compliment.
You must be very good.
Yeah. But I've been writing about sex for a long time, like my entire career since, 2008. I've been writing about sex in some guise, whether it was for teenagers on Kiss magazine or young adults on Stellar magazine or newspapers. I've written for the Irish Independent about sex. So
how has it changed over the years, do you think?
Do you know what? What's different now is that there aren't any magazines for young women. So in the past, when I worked for Kiss, which was aimed at Irish teenagers, like 12 plus, we had to write about that very appropriately and, consult experts. And we had a real responsibility to write about sex properly and be educational, but also reaching them in a way that, a sex book, a sex education book wouldn't. Like we almost called ourselves like their big sisters. So that's now gone in terms of an industry. And the kids today are getting all of their kind of sex information off the internet, which I find absolutely terrifying. I don't know about you as a mother.
It's unregulated, and I have a preteen at the moment, and oh my God, you need to set that up.
Totally.
That is such a good idea. Just somewhere for them to go, and it's non-judgmental, but it's in a fun, pop culture, relatable kind of way, because it's either too clinical or it can borderline misinformation.
Or it's like very American traditional conservative values and abstinence and stuff like that. And that's very popular on TikTok now as well. Yeah. So like we always preached like, abstain until you're old enough. But if you're ever going to do anything, do it safely. And I think that really worked, and even for like 20 somethings, like I remember writing articles about how to give good oral sex, how to receive oral sex well, stuff like that. And they weren't dirty or anything to be ashamed of. They were educational and aspirational and empowering. I felt empowered writing them. So I hope that the readers did. And I know when I was a kid, do you remember More Magazine's Position of the Week? They used to illustrate it, and sometimes they'd act it out with Barbies. And I felt very kind of sex positive then growing up in a world where I was being shown this stuff in a kind of, respectable way. It wasn't like under the covers or searching for something on Pornhub.
You must come from a very sex positive household.
I guess, yeah. My mum would have always been very open with me. Like I knew what periods were from when I was like 8, and I went into school and told everybody.
Oh, you were that girl.
And ruined their lives.
Yeah,
I remember
by
one
the way,
girl.
Here's Judy Blume coming at you.
I remember one girl being like, every month? Blood?
Yeah.
And me being like, yes, sorry. Because I think my mum and I were watching like Beverly Hills 90210, and one of the characters was talking about periods. And instead of like glossing over it, she just told me what they were. So I was, I knew stuff, I guess, younger than most people. But yeah, I was never ashamed of my body. I was never, freaked out by the thoughts of sex or anything. So I guess I'm very lucky in that way.
Is there any Irish in you whatsoever?
Well, do you know what? There's a lot of Italian in me.
Well, we know that.
But they're very Catholic over there too.
Super Catholic.
So I don't know. I'm half redhead, half Italian. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Maybe it does.
Fiery.
Let's talk about smut and what smut can do for pleasure and for desire and for relationships, because I think it has so many positives,
Absolutely.
doesn't it?
Yeah, no, totally. Like it's something that if you and your partner want to read together, it can be very erotic. Because some women might be put off by porn because it's very male centered, and the porn industry, again, largely unregulated. So whenever I've watched porn, I've been worrying about the women and going, are they okay? Are they doing this by choice? That sort of thing. And I think a lot of the time, it's shot through the male gaze. Whereas a lot of the time smut is written for women, or at least for, couples.
Yeah.
And I think it can be a really sexy way of, spicing things
Connecting.
up, connecting.
That's a great idea.
You could do a little buddy read. Have you ever done a buddy read with anyone?
Not loud, because he's such a slow reader.
Okay, so you throttle him. You'd be like, come on.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, get
buddy
to it.
reads can be very unsmutty. They're just like, read the first 5 chapters and we'll discuss them on WhatsApp about any kind of book. But if, say you're saying to your partner, like, read chapter 12 tonight. See you later.
That is a great way to connect,
right?
And it's I think especially for where couples find communication quite difficult, it's a great way to discuss something without discussing it, because somebody else is kind of doing it for you, but it's a gateway to, open up the floor and go as comfortable as you like in the conversation.
Exactly.
So that is a really good tip.
Educational as well.
Yeah.
Like you might learn tricks. And, tips and tricks and intimacy. Like, I think when you're reading a book, it's quite an intimate experience. It's quite tactile. You're holding something, you're taking it in, you're thinking about it. So to me, that kind of creates a sense of intimacy. And if you're doing that with your partner, someone that you trust, that can only improve things. Do you know what I mean? Now, I don't know if Joe would be thrilled if I was like, come on, let's read chapter 14 of Dragon Lust tonight. He'd be like, no.
Yeah.
But, if there was another book that we both were into, yeah, I'm sure.
What are your thoughts on 50 Shades? Let's talk about that.
I think 50 Shades was a good thing in many ways. It got a lot of people talking about sex, especially older women who would have felt quite ashamed about, discussing sex.
Yeah.
I remember at the time it was like 50 plus women were really into it, and they were getting into it via book clubs, and it was bringing up conversations around sex that they hadn't perhaps had. The actual books themselves, I don't think they're particularly well written. There's a lot of repetition. She keeps talking about her medulla oblongata, which to me, I'm like, even if you say that once in a book, it's too much.
Well done for saying it. Yeah.
So, it's not the best literature. There is much better. And like even things like, Sally Rooney's Normal People, that's literature, but there's loads of writing in it.
Yeah.
So, that could technically be literary smut. So 50 Shades, glad it started conversations. Think it could have been a better book to do so.
Okay, but it did something positive.
Yeah. I mean, it was very S&M oriented.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people in the BDSM community didn't think it represented them very well.
Sure.
And it was all about male control and stuff like that. So, it wasn't perfect, but art rarely is perfect. And I'm being very kind there calling it art. But look, it made billions.
It made billions.
Movies. If it got people off, good for them.
Absolutely. Let's talk about desire, because it can trigger stuff. And I do find when I speak to a lot of psychotherapists on the podcast, if they say when women come into them, at whatever age, if they're having problems in their relationship, a lot of it is they don't know what they want sexually. Yeah. So is this kind of literature helping them discover that, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think if you can imagine yourself in the scenario of the heroine or hero of the book and relate to that. I think sex in a lot of ways is all about relating to something. Like women's desire is very complex. It changes according to our hormones and our age and how long we've been with somebody and how much we fancy them and how we feel about our own bodies can play a huge part in it. So I think if we're reading a book where this woman is like a luscious, ripe object of desire, that can also be empowering, I think. And if you can see yourself in the character, you could then see yourself as a more kind of sexual being. Mm-hmm. And it's just arousing. Like smut is just, it's porn for the eyes.
Yeah.
And the brain.
Yeah.
So like you're imagining things. I think for women, our imagination is so powerful. And instead of having it presented to you, here is sex, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You're being forced to imagine it. Imagine what these people look like. Imagine how, their chemistry. So I think that's really important in the rise of smut. It's that we're being forced to use our brains, which in the world today where, so many people are outsourcing their brain to AI, it's actually really refreshing.
And being in that moment, I suppose, being present is very important. And when you're in a book like that, you're really in it, aren't you? You're not grabbing your phone. You're not thinking of your shopping list. You're in it in that moment. Exactly. And if it can do that for you, at least.
Exactly.
It's doing something. So why isn't there a section? Because if I go into, Eason's or Dubray or whatever. Like there isn't like a whole smutlit section. Where are these books?
No, you'll generally find them in the BookTok section, which there is a lot of now. Like they come wrapped in very saccharine packages often. You know, there'll be like a sweet little drawing of a couple on the front. I mean, there should be some sort of rating, like a spice rating. So, you know, if you want mildly spicy, one chili. Yeah, maybe that's something the bookshops could look into. But oftentimes you'll find it in books like mine, books like Marion Keyes, books like Kathy Kelly's, books about women often contain sex scenes because our lives contain sex scenes if we're lucky. And for me, like I grew up, reading Jackie and Jilly and Judy, the 3 J's, but I also grew up reading Marion and Patricia and Kathy and loads of other amazing, even Maeve Binchy, there was a bit of sex in her books, you know, and I learned as much from them as I did from the big kind of blockbuster smutty books. You know, I learned about, I think in Circle of Friends, Maeve Binchy's Circle of Friends, one of them loses her virginity and she puts a towel down on the bed. And I remember saying to my mum, like, why is she putting a towel down? And she was like, oh, she might have bled afterwards. And I was going, oh my God, like I didn't know that. So if I'm learning stuff from Maeve Binchy, about a book set in the 40s or 50s, you know, like imagine what people are learning today.
I just felt this overwhelming sense of responsibility as a writer that or do you feel that, or do you just put it all out there? Like, do you feel that responsibility when you're writing? Yeah, absolutely.
Like I feel that my stories have to be first and foremost relatable. Secondly, confidently written. Like, you know, I have to fully believe that these characters would do this, would, you know, go about their business like this. And yeah, I feel a responsibility to get things right, to reflect what modern Irish women are like. And, you know, the way you sell books and the way you become successful is if people read them and think, oh, she's just like me, or, oh, I know somebody like that. And that's what makes them real. And I always say that when a character starts kind of like doing their own thing and like doing something that I haven't predicted, that's when you know you've cracked it, when they take on a life of their own almost, which is kind of scary because I made them, you know? And now they're doing this stuff and it's like, wow. But I guess that's what writing fiction is.
Do you feel a responsibility to make your lead character or your main female character likable, in a sense that if she's too strong-willed or too successful, there's a perception that she mightn't be liked?
Do you know what? For me, women are so multifaceted. Each one of there's 3 main characters in Anywhere But Here, and each one of them has really unlikable traits and really likable traits. And I think that's just normal. Like that's just
human.
Yeah. And one of them, especially, she's kind of in her 40s. Her children have fled the nest, and she's looking at her husband and going, "Oh my God, do I have to hang out with this gobshite now for the next 40 years? Like I'm, you know, our marriage is kind of floundering." And she develops this insane crush. I can read you a passage about her if you like, but she was very interesting for me to write because she's far from perfect. You know, she's entertaining her desires. She's not being exactly faithful to her husband. And my husband had a real problem when he was reading my first draft. He was like, that Jess one is a wagon. I was like, do you know what? Her life has led her to here. It's very normal to kind of, you know, have bumps in the road in your marriage and in your relationship.
Sure.
So I'll read you.
Go on.
A sneaky peek. So the setup for this is that she has met this wellness guru. So he's like a 6'5" Adonis, looks like he's carved out of bronze, gorgeous. And he's shown an interest in her that she just didn't expect. You know, he's been sending her like sexy messages on Instagram and they've been flirting. So she's been having some thoughts.
Okay, go.
So chapter 19. Her back was pushed up against the wall, one leg raised and bent at the knee, with Rohan standing in front of her. He had one hand on her exposed breast, while the other was stroking and exploring her. She was weak with desire, her legs threatening to buckle as his fingers went deeper. Just as she felt like she couldn't take it anymore, he pinched the nipple he'd been gently caressing hard, and she cried out. Jess woke up, terrified she'd moaned in her sleep, but she didn't have to worry. Robbie was still snoring away, entirely oblivious to the fact that his wife had just had the most intense orgasm of her life in her sleep while fantasizing about another man. So Jess isn't an angel by any stretch, but these things happen.
But it's a dream.
It's a dream.
Real.
And she
God,
does.
you do write really well.
Oh, thanks. Are you horny now, Jen?
I'm horny for it now. I'm ready to go.
She's like, the thing with Jess is that, you know, she does try and direct her sexual energies towards her gobshite of a husband.
Yeah.
But he's, you know, not necessarily in the place to receive them. So she's feeling really unwanted and undesired. And then, you know, that just means she's living in this fantasy world a bit more than is appropriate. But, you know, these things happen in a long marriage. They've been married, you know, they were childhood sweethearts, they've been married a long time. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of have to acknowledge that and keep connected in some way, you know?
So we would love to hear what you think about Just Between Us. Your feedback helps us make the podcast even better, and it only takes a minute. As a thank you, you'll be entered into a draw to win a €500 one-for-all voucher. All you have to do is head over to mypodcastfeedback.com and enter the code US. Thanks so much for listening and for helping. Do you draw on some personal experiences, and obviously not, word for word, but do you have to kind of draw on some things that you see in friendships and families and relationships around you?
Yeah, totally. Like I've been writing about sex, like I said, for 18, 19 years. So all of those interviews I've done and experts I've interviewed and, even people I've just spoken to, that all lives in my brain and then comes out in different weird ways. Like I'd be very observant and quite spongy. So I'd soak it all up. And then, God knows how it's going to come out one day. But everything I've ever learned through my career as a journalist definitely has played a role in forming the characters, forming their situations. And it's exciting because I never know what's going to happen next.
It's really exciting. And I'm just thinking of anybody who's listening who has preteens or whatever. What has Judy Blume given us that, porn, doesn't give the teens of today?
Respect. Like Judy Blume's books were so respectful. Like her main character, I think it's Michael and Catherine. They're teenagers. They're like 17. It's not his first time, but it is her first time. And he's very caring and gentle and respectful. And, they don't end up together forever. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Whereas as a kid in Ireland, like a lot of our parents would have married their first boyfriend and didn't have casual sex and didn't have sex before marriage because that was the Ireland that we lived in. And that's kind of where I got the idea for this book, was that I was looking around at women in their 40s and thinking how different life is now, even from my mother's generation. Like I know people on their second marriage, people flat out in the apps, people who have grandkids in their 40s, the world is very different. We have come a very long way and we do have more freedom, but with that freedom comes a lot more kind of complications and problems as well.
Do you think if somebody is reading the smutlet that is, off the charts, kind of maybe a little bit problematic, do you think that is going to filter into their real life, or do you think that's going to be a problem for them, or will that instigate some darkness or something?
I don't know. I think you have to be quite responsible what you're choosing, right? So I wouldn't necessarily go to the dark side of the internet and look for, smutty fan fiction written by people who just, or even written by AI, like it's not a human, it's a robot. I think if you're reading smut that's very well received and, has sold millions of copies, and if that's a place for you to start. The off-campus books are very good. Have you watched the series?
No, I told you, I'm novice at this. You need to, I'm a novice, I've no idea.
Okay, I'm going to make you a list. I'm going to make a list for the podcast listeners, an intro.
I want one. So
there's some really smutty books from the 70s by a woman called Judith Krantz. And there's another one, Shirley Conran. She was Jasper Conran's mother. She only died recently. And those books were so much more filthy than modern books. If you want an intro to smut, I would watch, Heated Rivalry is amazing.
Yes.
And Off Campus is on Amazon Prime. That's more of a teen, it's like a college drama, also set in the world of hockey, because hockey is really hot right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether it's the ice and the spice coming together.
I don't know what it is. It's been hot.
Yeah, because it's just men battering each other with sticks. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, Off Campus is really lovely. It's really sexy and tender, and the sex scenes are really, really well done, and the books are very similar. So watch one of those as an intro.
Okay, so they're on the chili. Where are they? Where
I'd say they're both kind of in the middle. Heated Rivalry has some more raunchy moments.
Okay,
it's two lads, so it might be a bit surprising to some people who wouldn't be familiar with LGBTQ relationships.
And where does your new book? Anywhere but here, where does that
Quite
fare?
mild. Anywhere but here is probably the mildest of the three. Reality Check is probably the raunchiest.
Okay.
That was my first novel, and that's set in LA, but it's focusing on an Irish woman in her 60s who's a reality star and her 30-something daughters. And they're kind of surprised that their mum still has such an active sex life. They kind of walk in on her in some situations. So I think that was probably my smuttiest. And then Long Story is probably the next smuttiest. And then Anywhere But Here, I don't know, I think it's because there's three of them. I didn't have time to develop too much raunch.
Okay.
But there's enough.
How does the mother feel? How does the family feel about these books?
They love them.
Of course they do.
My dad called me a dirty bitch when he read Reality Check.
Brilliant.
But no, they love them. Like, they give them to their friends as gifts. And they're very proud. Yeah, extremely. And
well, they're so used to it at this stage.
That's it. Yeah,
Years
they
of
are.
it.
No, absolutely. And like, used to me writing in magazines about orgasms and, everything, losing your virginity to teenagers. So yeah, they're super proud. My books aren't filthy, but that doesn't mean that the next one won't be.
It's not in there. And exactly. You mentioned your fantasy man in one of your books there that Jess was having a fantasy about. Do you think these books, not just your book, but these smutlit books, written by a lot of women, for women, set unrealistic standards for men?
Not in my experience.
Okay.
No. I think that there are all different types of guys out there, and some are more kind of, what's the word, generous than others. But no, not unrealistic at all. You're not, if anything, characters like Christian Grey in 50 Shades, who's like a billionaire, really into BDSM and looking to kind of, almost pay for this woman's life in return for torturing her. That's unachievable. But, most of the books that are successful today, yeah, sure, you're not going to get a dragon slayer, but you might get a guy with similar other qualities to these guys. I think they're just amplified, right? So they're the hero on steroids. But stuff like, off campus, they're just hockey playing teenagers and, 21-year-olds. They're not out of the realm of possibility whatsoever. I think porn actually probably has more, unachievable standards for men and women, in terms of even body type and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
expectation.
Stamina.
Yeah. And performance and all of that. Absolutely. And for preteens and teenagers, is there any books that you think, or is there any books out there that you would recommend for them?
I think maybe the Heartstopper series. They're not very spicy in terms of, they're not very graphic.
What about relationships?
It's about relationships. That one's about a relationship between two boys. The latest one has just come out, and there's a show on Netflix as well if you wanted to watch that first before you let your kids. Again, I'd still recommend Judy. Like, maybe not forever for an 11-year-old, but there's one called Deanie that deals with masturbation. There's one called Tiger Eyes. They're kind of for mid-teenagers. Deanie is excellent. One of the characters in what I hope will become my next book is called Deanie after this character.
Brilliant.
She has scoliosis and she masturbates.
Good on her.
Those are some good. Yeah, I think Judy's still really relevant even though she wrote those books. I think those ones in the 80s.
And I think if we can direct teenagers and young adults that way,
yes,
we'll take them off the porn sites.
Yes. The porn sites terrify me.
Which can be really unhealthy
really,
and problematic.
Absolutely.
Unless it's ethical porn, but then, there's question marks over all of it.
All of it, yeah.
Vicky, thank you so much. Best of luck with your book. I know you have a very busy day ahead of you, and I can't wait for you to leave that with me so I can read it. Yay! Right, that's all for this week. I'm Jennifer Zamparelli, and thanks for listening to Just Between Us. If you love the podcast, please take a minute and leave us a review. Today's episode was produced by John Byrne, recorded by Alan Kelly, with sound design by Rory Bones.
We want to earn your trust and are members of the Trust Project. See our ethics policies at independent.ie/our journalism.